You have been outsmarted your entire life and you did not even know it. Not by smarter people, not by harder workers, by people who understood something you were never taught. The world operates on invisible laws, and those who know them control everything. Your career, your relationships, your reputation, your future. You have been honest when honesty was being used against you, kind when kindness was being exploited, waiting for fairness in a world that was never designed to be fair. Niccolo Machiavelli decoded all of this 5 centuries ago. Florentine diplomat, political strategist, he met the most powerful rulers and most dangerous killers of the Renaissance. Arrested, tortured, stripped of everything, exiled to a farm outside Florence. In that exile, he wrote the most dangerous book ever produced, The Prince. Dangerous not because it is evil, because it is true. Today, you discover his 21 laws of power, how to read people before they deceive you, how to protect yourself before they strike, how to build something real while the weak perform loyalty and beg for recognition. Every law is grounded in documented history and real psychology. Once you understand what Machiavelli understood, you will never be played again. If you want to stay comfortable, stop now. If you are ready to see the world as it actually is, stay. Before we begin, drop this in the comments. I do not beg for power. I become it. The first law is this: appearances are the only currency. The world does not reward what you are, it rewards what people believe you are. This is not cynicism. It is the operating system of human society. Machiavelli once wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are." The Prince, Chapter 18. Augustus Caesar was physically fragile and terrified of lightning. Yet he ruled Rome for 44 years by mastering image above all else, refusing the title of king, dressing simply, cultivating the appearance of a servant of the people while holding more power than any king in Roman history. Historian Suetonius documents this deliberate stagecraft in precise detail. Augustus understood that the performance of power was as important as the structure of power, sometimes more so. Most people invest all energy in what they actually are. The strategic person invests equal energy in what they appear to be. The halo effect, documented by Edward Thorndike in 1920, proves a strong first impression, automatically attributes competence and trustworthiness without evidence. You do not get a trial period, you get 3 seconds, manage them deliberately. Perception is the product. The second law is to control what you reveal, because controlling information means controlling the dynamic. Information is ammunition. Every fear you confess, every weakness you expose, every anxiety you volunteer, becomes a weapon someone else can load and fire when the moment is convenient for them. Machiavelli once wrote, "A prince must be a great pretender and dissembler." The Prince, Chapter 18. Cesare Borgia, whom Machiavelli studied in person during his diplomatic missions of 1502, lured a coalition of conspiring captains to the city of Senigallia in December 1502 with signals of reconciliation and goodwill. They came. He had them arrested. 2 were executed immediately. 3 were strangled days later. Machiavelli witnessed this and documented it in his official dispatch to Florence. Borgia won because the enemies believed they knew what he knew. They were catastrophically wrong. Information asymmetry was the weapon. Mystery is magnetic. Explanation is ordinary. Most people, when uncomfortable, talk. The strategic person releases only the information they choose at the time they choose. Curiosity becomes attention. Attention becomes influence. The psychological leverage of withheld information is absolute. Drop this in the comments. My silence is my strategy. The third law is this: never wound without finishing. Half measures are the most dangerous moves in the game. A wound that does not kill makes the enemy more dangerous, more motivated, and far more dangerous than before you acted. Machiavelli once wrote, "If an injury has to be done to a man, it should be so severe that his vengeance need not be feared." The Prince. Brutus and Cassius killed Julius Caesar in 44 BC, but left Octavian, Caesar's 18-year-old adopted heir, alive and free. Octavian used Caesar's will and the public's grief to build his own power base. Over 14 years, he systematically destroyed every one of the conspirators and then built the Roman Empire from the ruins of the Republic they thought they were saving. Both Brutus and Cassius were dead within 3 years of the assassination. The Republic was gone within 2 decades. One half measure, total destruction. Complete the action or do not begin it. The strategic calculation they failed to make cost them everything. The fourth law is to become the fox and the lion at the same time. Raw power without cunning is stupidity in armor. Cunning without power is intelligence waiting to be crushed. The sovereign person holds both without conflict. Machiavelli once wrote, "One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves." The Prince. Napoleon read The Prince obsessively. His personally annotated copy survives in historical collections, documented by biographer Andrew Roberts. Napoleon's genius was this dual capacity: lion in direct confrontation, fox in treaty and political maneuvering. His catastrophic failure came from deploying lion mode in a strategic situation, invading Russia in 1812, trying to overpower by force what force could not defeat. Terrain, winter, and a population willing to burn its own cities rather than yield. Most people default to one setting. The strategic person reads the environment first, then selects the response. That dual capacity is the core of Machiavellian self-mastery. Drop this in the comments. I adapt. I do not react. The fifth law is to build on what you control, not on what other people feel. Love is a gift. Gratitude is weather. Neither is a structure you can build on. Build your position on demonstrated irreplaceability, on skills that cannot be substituted, on knowledge that exists nowhere else, on relationships built through mutual value. Machiavelli once wrote, "Since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved." The Prince. Chapter 17. Queen Elizabeth. I ruled England for 45 years as a woman in a world that had never seen female sovereignty. She survived by building her position on what she controlled: intelligence networks, parliamentary relationships, alliances that made opposition structurally too costly. When advisers pressed her to marry, she refused. A husband would carry a structural claim over her authority. She died the most powerful monarch England had produced in generations. Expert power built on demonstrated capability outlasts emotional power every time. That structural thinking, not sentiment, was her power. The sixth law is to prepare for the moment when fortune disappears. Virtue, Machiavelli's concept of capacity, readiness, and the active cultivation of ability, is his most important contribution to the understanding of power. It is not virtue in the moral sense. It is the trained ability to meet any circumstance the moment it arrives. Machiavelli once wrote, "All courses of action are risky. So prudence is not in avoiding danger, it is calculating risk and acting decisively. Make mistakes of ambition and not mistakes of sloth. The Discourses. Machiavelli warned Florence for 14 years to build a citizen militia rather than depend on mercenaries. The warnings were ignored. In 1512, Spanish forces invaded. The mercenaries evaporated. Florence fell. Machiavelli was arrested, tortured by Strappado, and thrown into exile. Everything he had warned about came true because comfort had been confused with preparation. Build reserves, build skills, build networks. Do it before you need any of it. Strategic preparation is not pessimism, it is the discipline that makes power durable. Drop this in the comments. I prepare before the storm. The seventh law is to control the frame, because the frame controls the outcome. Every conversation has an invisible frame, a context, that determines what counts as success, who carries the burden of proof, what kind of answer is even possible. The person who sets the frame before speaking has already won. Machiavelli once wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel." The Prince. Frederick the Great of Prussia, who kept a personal copy of The Prince despite publicly writing a critique of it, framed his 1740 invasion of Silesia not as aggression, but as the pursuit of a legitimate historical territorial claim. The claim was weak, but by introducing it first into the diplomatic conversation, he created hesitation and division among potential opponents. He took Silesia in 6 weeks. Tversky and Kahneman's 1974 anchoring research confirms the first interpretation introduced into any evaluation becomes the cognitive anchor against which everything else is measured, even when that anchor is demonstrably arbitrary. Set the anchor. The conversation follows your lead. Narrative control is power. The eighth law is to treat your allies as infrastructure. No one builds an empire alone. The quality of the people around you determines the ceiling of what is possible for you more than any individual skill you possess. Machiavelli once wrote, "The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him." The Prince, Chapter 22. Augustus Caesar was not Rome's greatest general. He built the Roman Empire through extraordinary ally selection. Marcus Agrippa won the Battle of Actium in 31 BC. Virgil and Livy gave the regime cultural legitimacy. Maecenas managed aristocratic relationships. Augustus's greatest strategic genius was selection, knowing whose capabilities to deploy and how. Christakis and Fowler's research confirms behaviors and outcomes spread through social networks up to 3 degrees of separation. The network is the environment. Choose it deliberately. Power dynamics are shaped by networks before they are shaped by individuals. Drop this in the comments. I am deliberate about who I let into my orbit. The ninth law is to deliver pain once and favors slowly. When you must cause pain, do it once, completely, and do not revisit it. When you can deliver benefit, do it in slow, continuous installments over time. This is not manipulation, it is the architecture of psychological impact. Machiavelli once wrote, "Injuries should be inflicted all at once, so that their bitterness will be less keenly felt. Favors should be granted little by little, so that they will be more keenly appreciated." The Prince, Chapter 8. Catherine de' Medici, regent of France through the wars of religion, removed rivals decisively when necessary and built loyalty through years of patronage distributed in small, continuous streams. Historian Jean Aurieux attributes her ability to hold the Valois monarchy together to this mastery of timing. Kahneman's peak-end rule confirms a complete injury registers as less damaging over time than prolonged low-grade pain. Small, repeated benefits produce stronger loyalty than a single large gesture. The strategic use of timing is one of the least discussed and most powerful tools in Machiavellian influence. The 10th law is to build value instead of emotional debt. When you expect gratitude to translate into loyalty, you have confused an emotion for a structure. Feelings change with context. Interests are structural and consistent. Machiavelli once wrote, "Men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear." The Discourses. Cosimo de' Medici built Florentine political dominance not through affection, but through economic entanglement. His bank lent to the Pope, to rulers across Europe, to merchants and nobles. When his enemies exiled him from Florence in 1433, he was recalled within a year, not because people felt grateful, but because the city's economic relationships depended on his presence. You cannot exile a man whose absence costs you money. Build mutual value. Social exchange theory confirms equitable, mutually beneficial relationships outlast emotionally intense but imbalanced bonds every time. That is strategic power that lasts. Drop this in the comments. My relationships are built on value, not empty loyalty. The 11th law is to build in silence and announce only in victory. What you announce before it is finished is what you give your enemies time to destroy. The unfinished thing cannot defend itself. Protect it by keeping it invisible until it is complete. Machiavelli once wrote, "There is nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, or more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things." The Prince, Chapter 6. Thomas Cromwell, Chief Minister of Henry VIII, prepared every major act of the English Reformation in complete secrecy before its introduction. The Acts of Parliament that dismantled the Catholic Church's power in England were legally complete before opponents understood what was happening. You cannot fight a law that has already passed. Peter Gollwitz's research at NYU demonstrates that premature announcement causes the brain to partially substitute social recognition for actual achievement, reducing the internal drive to complete the work. The announcement replaces the result. Build in silence. Results are the only announcement that matters. Silence is a strategic asset. The 12th law is to neutralize threats before they grow. A problem in its early form requires a fraction of the resources it will demand when fully developed. Read early signals and act when the cost is still small. Machiavelli once wrote, "Disorders that arise in a state, if observed early, are quickly remedied, but if not seen in time, there is no longer any remedy." The Prince, Chapter 3. The Roman Senate's failure to check Julius Caesar's power accumulation in the 50s BC is the most documented case of this failure in Western history. Caesar's campaigns in Gaul gave him wealth, a loyal army, and massive popular prestige, all legible threats to the Republic. Alarms were raised. Nothing was done while action was still cheap. By 46 BC, Caesar was declared dictator in perpetuity. The assassination of 44 BC was the catastrophically expensive response to a problem solvable years earlier at a fraction of the cost. Read early. Act early. Strategic awareness is the discipline of reading threat signals before they become crises. Drop this in the comments. I read the room before the room reads me. The 13th law is to remember that the world judges outcomes, not intentions. You will not be remembered for your intentions, your process, or your struggle. You will be remembered for what you delivered. The world is outcome-focused. You produced, or you did not. Machiavelli once wrote, "The vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar." The Prince, Chapter 18. Augustus Caesar's path to power included proscriptions, official lists of enemies to be killed and their property seized, in which thousands of Romans were murdered. This was documented and widely known. And yet, by the end of his reign, Augustus was worshipped as Pater Patriae, Father of the Fatherland, awarded by the Senate in Secular BC. 4 decades of peace, prosperity, and cultural achievement had completely absorbed the methods. Outcomes override process. Results override intention. Stop explaining your effort. Produce results. The world does not have time to appreciate your process. That is dark psychology at its most honest. Results are the only currency that matters. The 14th law is to understand that strategic absence is strategic power. The most powerful move is sometimes complete withdrawal. Your disappearance removes the oxygen from a dynamic that was feeding on your engagement. Machiavelli once wrote, "Never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception." The Prince. After his exile in 1512, Machiavelli did not fight publicly. He withdrew to his farm and wrote The Prince, the Discourses, the Art of War, building the most influential body of political thought in Western history, while his enemies assumed he had been neutralized. The withdrawal was not defeat. It was repositioning. Robert Cialdini's 1984 research on the scarcity principle confirms people assign higher value to things that are less available. Strategic scarcity of presence is one of the most underused tools in modern power dynamics. Deliberate absence is not passivity. It is a calculated recalibration of power dynamics. Drop this in the comments. My absence is as calculated as my presence. The 15th law is to trust behavior and never trust flattery. The flatterer is more dangerous than the open enemy. The open enemy is visible. The flatterer corrupts your information landscape, invites overconfidence, and positions to betray you when advantageous. Machiavelli once wrote, "Courts are full of flatterers because men are so pleased with their own opinions and so easily deceived in them that they are difficult to guard against." The Prince, Chapter 23. Cardinal Wolsey, Chief Minister of Henry VIII from 1515 to 1529, surrounded himself with advisers who confirmed his opinions rather than challenged them. When the question of Henry's divorce became the central political crisis, Wolsey was completely unprepared for the Pope's actual position and the Spanish Emperor's real leverage. He died in 1530, en route to trial for treason, destroyed in large part by the flattery he had cultivated. A flattering picture of a bad situation produces catastrophic decisions made with complete confidence. The strategic person builds a power base on accurate information, not comfortable illusions. The signal of a trustworthy ally is consistent, honest feedback, not agreement. The 16th law is to treat your reputation as a fortress and maintain it like one. Your reputation precedes you into every room you have not yet entered. It negotiates before you speak. A strong reputation removes obstacles that no individual action could clear. A damaged one creates obstacles that no individual quality can overcome. Machiavelli once wrote, "It is most essential that a prince should seem to have all the good qualities, mercy, faith, integrity, humanity, religion." The Prince, Chapter 18. When the Spanish Armada was defeated in 1588, Elizabeth the Fernand appeared at Tilbury before her troops in armour on horseback, a carefully staged performance that burned the image of the warrior queen into English consciousness for generations. The reputation was the infrastructure that held her court together across 45 years of existential threats. Every interaction deposits into or withdraws from your reputational account. You are managing your reputation whether you know it or not. Reputation is strategic capital, and it compounds over time. Drop this in the comments. My name speaks before I enter. The 17th law is to adapt your methods before those methods destroy you. Tactics that produced results in one context become liabilities in the next. The person who cannot update their methods when the environment shifts is not loyal to proven principles, they are rigid. And rigidity, in Machiavelli's clear observation, is the primary cause of the fall of men who once held great power. Machiavelli once wrote, "A man who is used to acting in one way never changes. He must come to ruin when the times in changing no longer are in harmony with his ways." The Prince, Chapter 25. Cesare Borgia fell because he could not adapt when his structural foundation collapsed. His entire position rested on his father, Pope Alexander VI. When Alexander died in 1503 and the papacy passed to Julius II, Borgia's direct enemy, everything built for the previous world became worthless. Borgia died in battle in exile at 31, not defeated by a superior enemy, defeated by a changed context. The goal is fixed. The method is a tool. Tools are replaced. You do not mourn a strategy. You retire it. Psychological rigidity is the enemy of sustained power. The 18th law is to control your emotional display so you can control the room. Emotion displayed without intention is weakness on public broadcast. When you show anger, you tell your opponent which button produces a reaction. When you show desperation, you destroy your own leverage. Machiavelli once wrote, "The prince ought to have no other aim or thought but war and its discipline." Preparation is internal, and it extends directly to emotional preparation. The man who has done the internal work does not need to perform emotion. He operates from completeness, not from exposed need. Stanford psychologist James Gross's research identifies two emotional regulation strategies: suppression, hiding emotion after it arises, and reappraisal, reframing the situation before the emotion dominates. Suppression is physiologically costly. The stress response continues internally while you perform calm. Reappraisal modulates the response at the source: lower cortisol, lower heart rate, higher cognitive performance under pressure. The emotion is your information, not their weapon. Process internally. Respond from calculation. That discipline is the foundation of psychological power. Drop this in the comments. My emotions are my intelligence, not my weakness. The 19th law is to resolve completely or release completely. The wound neither finished nor healed festers. The conflict neither resolved nor ended creates a continuous drain on your attention and energy. There is no strategic middle ground between complete resolution and complete release. Machiavelli once wrote, "If an injury has to be done to a man, it should be so severe that his vengeance need not be feared." The Prince. Henry VIII waited 15 months after Thomas More refused the oath of supremacy, holding him in the Tower, hoping for capitulation. More did not capitulate. He was executed in July 1535. The waiting accomplished nothing except prolonged tension and More's continued presence as a symbol of principled opposition. Soviet psychologist Bluma Zygarnik documented in 1927 that unfinished situations demand cognitive attention at dramatically higher rates than completed ones. Close the loop. In either direction, the middle ground is a drain. Incomplete resolution is a power drain disguised as patience. The 20th law is to force fortune's hand by moving first. The world rewards the person who acts, while others hesitate. Fortune does not visit those who wait for perfect conditions. Perfect conditions are a construction of the hesitant mind, learning to confuse preparation with avoidance. Machiavelli once wrote, "Make mistakes of ambition, and not mistakes of sloth." The Discourses. In 1513, Machiavelli wrote The Prince as an explicit attempt to win patronage from Lorenzo de' Medici, the very family whose return to power had destroyed his career. He offered the most honest analysis of power ever produced to the people it most exposed. Lorenzo never employed him, but the book became immortal. The bold act outlasted every calculation that would have counseled restraint. Action creates information. You do not know if the path is viable until you walk it. Move. Adjust from motion. Drop this in the comments. I move first. I adjust from motion. The 21st law is to play the long game and protect your future self. Every decision today is a gift or a punishment to the person you will become. The short-sighted exchange of long-term position for short-term relief is the single most common path by which capable people destroy the futures they were building. Machiavelli once wrote, "Whoever desires to found a state and give it laws must start with the assumption that all men are bad and ever ready to display their vicious nature. Build for the worst conditions, not only for the best." The Medici Bank survived wars and crises because Cosimo built it with structural resilience, reserves maintained, operations diversified across cities and clients. Raymond Deruva's 1963 definitive study identifies Cosimo's long-term thinking as the decisive variable separating the Medici's success from contemporaries who extracted more in good years and had nothing when conditions changed. Make every significant decision from the perspective of your future self. The long game is where architects of empires operate. Strategic resilience is what turns capability into legacy. You are not the same person who started this video. Your 21 laws, appearances are the currency. Control what you reveal. Never wound without finishing. Be the fox and the lion. Build on what you control. Prepare for fortune's absence. Frame the conversation before it begins. Your allies are infrastructure. Pain once, favors slowly. Build value, not emotional debt. Build in silence. Neutralize threats when small. The world judges outcomes. Strategic absence is strategic power. Trust behavior over flattery. Your reputation is a fortress. Adapt your methods. Control your emotional display. Complete resolution in either direction. Force fortune's hand. Play the long game. The naive version of you did not understand that the world runs on invisible laws. You understand them now. The version of you waiting for fairness, performing loyalty, hoping to be recognized, that version is gone. Drop this final affirmation in the comments. I am the architect of my own empire. I do not wait. I do not explain. I build in silence, and I win. If this changed the way you see the world, hit like, subscribe. We are just getting started.